All right, here's the question. How much caffeine is in yerba mate? Great question. And I myself want to know the answer to that question.
Welcome to the Yerba Power Podcast, where we share the power of yerba mate with the world. Introducing your host, Devin.
Welcome, everyone, to the Yerba Power Podcast. Hey, I'm Devin. I'm your host of the Yerba Power Podcast. Thanks for joining me. Today, we're going to answer one of these questions that I myself am trying to find out the exact answer to. And people ask me all the time, how much caffeine is in yerba mate? So, just with that being said, I am not a doctor. I don't play one on the internet. So, what I am going to talk about in this episode is not medical advice by any means. Hopefully you understand that, but just for a disclaimer, I want you to know that I'm not a doctor. So let's do some research, find out how much caffeine is in yerba mate. Let's learn together. So I am looking at an article from the National Library of Medicine where they say that the caffeine content in a cup are about 150 milliliters, which for us U.S. system, that's 5 ounces, so less than an actual cup of yerba mate tea, is comparable to that of a cup of coffee, which is about 80 milligrams of caffeine. I'm honestly surprised by this statistic because I just assumed it would be closer to like 100, because I also assumed that a cup of coffee is about 100 milligrams of caffeine. At least that's what I've seen for like different shots of espresso. However, there's the debate about the different types of caffeine that yerba mate delivers compared to coffee, which we can talk about in another episode. For now, I just want to answer that question. How much caffeine? The short answer is, well, it depends. Because it depends on if you are brewing it cold. It depends on if you are, if you're brewing it cold, if you're brewing it hot, depending on what type of yerba you're using. So in other words, is it the dried out smoked flavored, or is it the chimarrão, like very green, less aged yerba? The chimarrão, which is typical of Brazil. Or is it maybe in a tea bag, or is it in a can? That's really the question, or the answer is it depends. However, for all sakes and purposes, let's talk about the traditional way, just to get to the more, let's say, standard. But if you are brewing it the traditional way, which is loose herbs, I see a blog here that says about 10 milligrams of caffeine per gram of loose herb. So they're saying a tablespoon is about 3 grams. And if you were to put that in a French press and with about 8 ounces of water, brew it that way, it'd be 30 milligrams, which would be significantly less than a cup of coffee. However, I don't use, 3 tablespoons. I actually don't measure it that way at all, but I would give or take a couple tablespoons maybe, because it also depends on the size of the quart you're using. So let's say, 3 tablespoons, because I feel like that's fair. That would make it, 3 grams, so 9 grams, about 90 milligrams of caffeine. So still comparable to a cup of coffee as far as the amount of caffeine. So I'm looking at a couple different articles besides the National Library of Medicine. So WebMD, talking about the amount of caffeine. Let's see. So WebMD gives a breakdown of the different interactions, chemicals that are in yerba mate, but I'm looking for the amount of caffeine, not these other vitamins, although cool. Talking about theophylline and theobromine and verapamilin, fine. Okay. The caffeine in yerba mate can decrease the effects of carbamazepine. So Google that, I guess, on WebMD. Avoid consuming more than 300 milligrams of caffeine daily, about 6 cups of yerba mate. So if we took 300, let's do some math here, 300 divided by 6, 50 milligrams per cup, which I'm just going to assume they're talking about traditional gourd because, we don't drink it by the cup usually unless you're, I guess, French pressing it, but we're talking about traditional way here, or at least that's why I want to narrow it down here. All right, there's another blog on the Food and Wine, the Food and Wine magazine. Obviously not a doctor or, medical advice. This is a blog, so just take that with what you will. It says herbal yerba mate tea contains roughly as much caffeine as coffee, about 80 milligrams per cup. So as you can see, there's different amounts listed. However, I guess just the basic thing, is to say that it's comparable to a cup of coffee, which that's, I guess, what anybody wants to know, right? You want to compare it to a cup of coffee.
However, with yerba mate, you drink it more than once. You pour it and re-drink it, pour it and re-drink it. Versus coffee, you drink that one cup one time. You can obviously pour another cup of coffee, but you don't, I guess, drink from the same bean, I guess, necessarily. You don't just put the grounds in a cup and continue to pour hot water. I guess that's the better way of explaining it.
I also decided to reach out to Gabriel. He is a fellow matero. He's been drinking yerba mate for a while. He's a health and nutrition coach based in San Diego. So his whole business is obviously about health and nutrition. He talks about yerba mate on his Instagram. I'll tag him in here as well. Thanks, Gabriel. Here's his answer when I asked him about the different caffeine.
Hey, good morning, brother. So that's a great question. I've read so many different things and so many different articles. There's not a clear, concise amount of caffeine per serving. As you know, each mate gourd is different. I guess you can go by grams and do that by tablespoons, but even then, I'm still not sure because each mate is different, whether it's smoked or unsmoked and all that stuff. And mate is actually, I don't know if you know, but it's made up of they call it matine, which is made up of 3 stimulants, which is theophylline, theobromine, and caffeine. And it's not that much caffeine. It's mainly theobromine, which is it's the sister chemical to caffeine, and it's what gives mate the more gentle push, the more sustainable push, versus caffeine and coffee, where it gives you that straight punch and then that slump, and people experience that afternoon crash. Well, that's not the case for mate, as you know, and we know, because the theobromine, it kind of carries you out and gives you more of a sustainable ride. You know what I mean? So it's obviously much more balanced with the nutrients and the minerals, especially amino acids and all that wonderful, wonderful stuff. But yeah, that's a great question, man. I'm actually, I'm going to start researching that more. But even then, it's not just caffeine. That's what a lot of these articles fail to mention, that it's made up of theobromine and theophylline. Theophylline is the chemical that's in green tea. Mate has the theobromine, and caffeine, just like chocolate, has theobromine. That's why it can give you a little bit of an energy boost and make you feel euphoric as well. So yeah, theobromine is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Have a wonderful day, bro. God bless.
Another good study I see here is that according to the way you prepare it, so as far as tereré, that 100 milliliters of water, which is probably 3 ounces, so not even a cup, in cold prepared, so tereré, was found to be about 2.5 times higher than that of the hot water brewed chimarrão drink, which chimarrão is the more green Brazilian yerba. And The same as in 24 and 10 milliliters of espresso coffee. And I personally have tried different yerbas from different brands, even in the same country, and have more strength than others. As far as like, obviously the bitterness, and I wonder if the longer it's been aged, if it has more caffeine in it. It says here in a study of teas from Uruguay, Argentina, and Brazil, 3 from each of the country, it was shown that Uruguayan teas had the highest contents of caffeine in theobromine. According to this National Library of Medicine, also it says brewing with boiling water was very inefficient, and regardless of the time, the drinking had 2 times lower caffeine concentration. So there you go. There's another reason not to have your water that hot when drinking mate. I personally am thought of as a weirdo sometimes because I drink it at 140 Fahrenheit, which other people drink like 160. So maybe I'm onto something there. Then they have a table here of the different type of preparation infusions. So 50 milligrams green versus 20 milligrams of roasted are equal caffeine contents and infused for 10 minutes. Then they did the chamarau, compared the 85 grams and brewed with 5 ounces of water. And the amount of caffeine went lower, obviously, the more times it was brewed. However, there was still even caffeine content after the 30th time. So I guess what I was getting at earlier about how that you continue to drink and sip on the yerba mate, that you're still getting caffeine, I guess, throughout the process. And I think another valid point, though, is not just caffeine, but also the other antioxidants and alkaloids and other, I guess, benefits that are also in yerba mate. Those that are concerned about caffeine, as far as wanting to lower their caffeine content, there are ones that are lighter, as far as I guess what they call the suave is the more smooth, more subtle, lighter yerbas. You can brew it kind of like a regular tea, and to me it's not as strong in that way. It says here also a similar relationship was found in subsequent studies in which caffeine concentration increased with brewing time, obtaining the highest content in beverages poured over water at 70 degrees Celsius, which is like 180, I think, Fahrenheit, brewed for 45 minutes, which, I don't know who would brew that long unless you just forgot about it. Brewing with boiling water was very inefficient, which we already said. So, fun fact, I guess, is that even chocolate milk has about 6.2 grams, and as well as the theobromine. I guess to answer your question still, though, as far as what's the amount of caffeine content in yerba mate, looks like the most consistent is basically somewhere between 80 to 120, so similar to a cup of coffee, which also can vary on your cups of coffee depending on how you brew it as well, right? So that to me is the most concise answer that I've seen, looking at different websites and research and articles.
Hope you found this episode interesting and helpful. Hope it answered at least one of your questions about what your mate and the caffeine content. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know. I want to hear feedback from you guys. I'm trying to do the best by you and provide valuable content, as well as answer these questions, learn together. Write me on Instagram, check out my YouTube channel. Let me know. Send me an email, something, pigeon with a note in it. However, just, I'd love to hear from you. Please, comment, let me know what's going on, what you guys are thinking about, what things you guys want to hear about, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.